Hi, before we get started, I just wanted to update you. I told you a couple of weeks ago that I was starting a new rating system. Well, this is the first teaching that we're going to have a rating system on. And this one I'm going to rate, it really could be rated G, but I'm going to rate it PG because it has a picture of a tarantula in it and, yuck. Anyway, if you don't understand the rating system and why I've instituted it, make sure that you check out my YouTube channel and watch the new rating system, because we're going to be studying everything in the New Testament, and not all kids are ready for all levels of information, and I need you to work with me to make sure that they have what they need, when they need, and they don't get anything that you don't want them to have. So, hi, I'm Miss Tyler, and welcome to Context for Kids special teaching here. And this is one of my most favorite things to teach because it's hilarious. Showing the difference between, showing why context is important, and showing how our context is different than context even in countries that are close to us. And I'll show you what I mean in a bit. So, what is context and why is it important? Well, it's important because the people of the Bible lived in a very different time. They didn't have computers. If you said mouse, well, one, you were talking English and they wouldn't understand what the heck you were talking about. But even if you said mouse in Hebrew or Greek, they would be thinking of the little thing scurrying across the floor, and you probably mostly think of what we operate our computers with, a computer mouse. We've got so many words today that mean entirely different things than they would have meant back then. So, there's a great teacher named John Walton, and I have a lot of his books, and he teaches the difference between our context and the context of Bible times. And he has this great saying that I want to kind of throw at you. Don't be alarmed. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's that the Bible wasn't written to us, but it was written for us. The Bible was written to Jews. It was written to people who lived as Jews, who had a Jewish context, who lived in, the land of Israel, and sometimes some of them lived in like Assyria and Babylon, depending on, if we're talking about, or Egypt. Some of the, well, they didn't live in Egypt when the Bible was being written. Never mind, just ignore Miss Tyler. But they lived in a certain environment where people didn't live in homes the way we live in homes today. People didn't have ovens the way we have ovens today. They didn't have televisions. They didn't have computers. They didn't have the same scientific knowledge that we have. And so, God didn't write to them as though they were 21st century people with cars and airplanes and televisions and computers and all that, because he would have said things differently. He wrote to people who didn't have any of those things and who understood the world in a certain way. Now, fortunately, what God was writing about makes that not matter nearly so much, because God was revealing his plans and his characters. His character and his plans and his character don't change no matter where we are in history or how we think or how we live. What he did was the people he wrote, the people who originally wrote the Bible to, he communicated them in a way they could understand. Because he always talks to us where we are, because he's a good, loving, and merciful God. Does that mean we can't learn anything about the Bible? No way! The Bible is for us, like I said. It's just sometimes we need a little bit of translating, not just from Hebrew and Greek to English, but sometimes certain cultural situations we need change. Sometimes the way they said things, well, we think they mean an entirely different thing because we don't understand. So, but today we're going to talk about that. It's going to be funny. So, anyway, what is context? Context is how we live, talk, and think that makes us different from other things. That's our context. Now, I like to say context is the stuff that we know that we just take for granted that everyone knows. If you were writing a letter to some friends in another country, you may say you had a hot dog yesterday for dinner. depending on what country they're from, they may think that you went down, and took a dog and you cooked it and you ate it. They don't know what a hot dog is. Why should they? If they don't have them in their country, there's no reason for them to know that. They just might really get the wrong idea about what you like to eat. There are so many different things, and we're going to talk about those when we talk about really funny idioms. So, now, how we live. One of the biggest things that differentiates people, like I just said with the hot dog, is the kind of things that we eat. Now, in the Bible, the word food is used. And did you know that food means different things in every single country? Did you know that in England, for example, they'll eat horse? Well, here in America, that is an abominable thought. No one would want to eat, some people would want to eat horse, but in general, Americans are aghast and just disgusted at the thought of eating horse. And in Europe, they don't have a problem with that. They don't have the same context. Okay? Now here's one that everybody, now if you're in England, you understand that for people in England, eating horse is normal. And here it's not. But here's one we can all relate to. Okay. What is this? Oh, geez, I don't even like standing next to the picture. That is a tarantula. And when I was 9 years old and we moved back to Calaveras County, California, they had had some rain conditions that year where these were crawling on the roadways. Tarantulas everywhere. So for me, that is yucky and that is something to be avoided. But in the Amazon, that's food. Now, when you and I say food, unless you're from the Amazon, that doesn't even remotely enter into your mind. And if you've never heard of anyone eating that, you wouldn't even come up with it crazy off the top of your head. Context. That girl, when she hears food, tarantula is one of the things that she thinks of. Now in the Bible, when they say the word food, you got to look at who's writing that word and what do they mean about it. So when, and we find the definition, well, it's all, leafy things that aren't poisonous, fish with fins and scales, and animals that not only have a split hoof, but also chew the cud. Oh, and then some birds too. Not like predatory birds. But that's their context. When they say food, they may not mean what we mean when we say it. So that's just one of the examples. We can't assume that other people mean the same thing as we do. Otherwise, if somebody from the Amazon invites us over for dinner, we may not know what we're getting in for. Okay, well, how about how we talk? This is my favorite part. That other part I didn't like so much. Mouth feels like it's got furry tarantula legs in it, just talking about it. Ugh. Okay, so we've got phrases in English that won't make sense in other countries, in other languages. Kick the bucket. Well, it means to die. Why it means that, I don't know, but everybody knows, well, everybody my age knows what it means to kick the bucket. What it means if you've got your head in the clouds, you're daydreaming. That's just something we learn. Dead as a doornail. That means you've been dead a long time. You're not within the CPR, range of resuscitation. A piece of cake, it means easy. Butterflies in my stomach, it means I'm nervous. These are all things that make sense to people who have the same context that I do. But other modern nations, they would look at this and go, what is so easy about a piece of cake? You've obviously never had to do a really hard workout after eating a piece of cake, because that isn't easy. Not that I'm bitter. Okay. Now this is fun. We're going to play the idiom game, and we're going to go through different phrases from other countries, and you're going to try and guess what they mean. So get your pause button so that you guys can talk with each other and try and figure out what these idioms mean, and then I will tell you. Okay, so in Romania, they have a phrase that says, a man with a chair on his head. A chair on his head. What do you think that means? Well, let's find out. Man with a chair on his head is a wise man. And only Romanians would know why that is. I don't know. This is one of my favorites. Actually, my two favorites are, well, no, two of my three favorites are from the Middle East. Persia. I want to eat your liver. Now, if somebody said that to you in America, run. Just run. Because that's a scary dude. And he wants to eat your actual liver. But what do you think that means in Persia? Any ideas? It means you're so cute. So let's pretend that this was an expression in Texas. I just want to eat your liver. Oh gosh, you're so cute. Doesn't make sense. Would you have guessed that in a million years? I wouldn't have. Okay, how about Greece? In Greek, they have expression, sit on your eggs. This does not sound like a good idea, just in case anyone was wondering. And what this means is certainly not what I would do if I sat on my eggs. It means to stay where you are. I don't know about you. If I sat on some eggs, my first thought would be to get up and go somewhere else and get a bath. All right. How about, okay, this one's the scariest. Mexican. In Mexico, they have this phrase, the clown has already picked you up. And if you weren't already scared enough of clowns, this one will do it for you. So what does it mean? It means you're doomed. But you know what? Clowns are kind of creepy. So we could have all figured that out anyway. That one's not so surprising. But it's funny that in Mexico, they actually have an expression that means that. All right, so maybe you like clowns. Maybe you do. That's okay. Okay, how about in Germany? In German, they have an expression that says, I think my pig whistles. Oh. Yeah, me neither. It means I can't believe it. Now here's one. I like this one too. Arabic. You are popping my liver. Well, it doesn't sound like a very nice thing to do. It sounds kind of dangerous. And how would one pop another person's liver anyway? I don't know. Let's find out what it means. It means you're making me really angry. And I gotta admit, if someone popped my liver, I would probably be really angry and in the hospital. I mean, I got this friend and he has this vein in his neck. And whenever he gets upset, we tease him. We say, it's going to blow. That's kind of like this. All right, this one's funny. In Japan, they have a saying. They say, stinky like water. Stinky like water? Do they have bad quality water in Japan? Does it smell bad? What the heck's going on? Well, it means another American idiom. Don't be such a stranger. It means, don't wait so long before coming to visit me again. Stinky like water. Try that with your grandma. Yeah, or no. All right. And in Dutch, okay, in Holland, they have this phrase called, don't tie the cat to the bacon. Who would do that? What does it mean? Well, let's see. Don't start a fight. I don't know exactly why it would start a fight if you tied a cat to the bacon. Anyway. Now the third, so that's our idiom game. Do you see how if you read these things, if somebody wrote you a letter from any of these cultures and they said any of these things, and you tried to just figure it out yourself, how many of them would you have been right about and how many of them would you have been wrong about? Maybe just the clown one, because if the clown's already picked you up, yeah, you're doomed. All right, so now how about the way we think? ancient cultures, this is going to be a lot about what we're studying this year. Honor and shame versus innocence and guilt. Now I hope that you've taken my honor and shame in the Bible curriculum, because I'm not going to be able to really teach honor and shame this year, because it actually take me a year of doing it every single week to really do a good job. I just don't have the time. That's why I write the books on the bigger subjects. But they cared about your reputation more than they cared about if you were actually innocent or guilty of a crime. You see, we're completely different. See, we think it's more important if you're innocent than if you have high honor. And see, honor for them didn't mean what it means to us either. So there's another thing. When they say honor, they don't mean internally that you're a good person. They mean that you've got a lot of prestige, that you've got reputation and standing, that your daddy and your daddy's daddy were great people, respectable people. They don't care so much about what you do. They just care about your status. But nowadays, it's not true in the way it was before. I mean, people still care about their reputation, but they're more concerned with whether you are an innocent person or a guilty person. All right, that's a big difference. And when we read the Bible, if we assume they care about innocence and guilt the way we do, it's not going to read the same way. Okay, they were spiritual, we're scientific. When they saw the sun up in the sky, they thought about God or gods running that and making it operate. They were wondering how the gods were doing it and why the gods were doing what they were doing. And when they thought about rain, they thought about God providing it. We're scientific. We look for scientific explanations for everything. See, when we see the sun up in the sky, we think, well, that's a self-contained thermonuclear reaction. And that's not bad to think of it that way. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different context, a different point of view. Because people in the ancient world, well, they were great mathematicians and engineers. As a matter of fact, do you know we still don't know exactly how they made the Great Pyramids? We're astounded by it. Because their engineering prowess was so amazing. They invented things that still have not been changed because they're so brilliant as far as engineering and math goes. But until 500 BC, everybody in the ancient world thought that your heart was where your thoughts were, that you thought with your heart, that all your emotions were here, and that that your brain was simply kind of skull stuffing. They didn't know what it did. They didn't think it was useful for anything. The Egyptians thought the brain was so useless that when they would mummify someone to prepare them for the afterlife, they would save their heart and their lungs and their internal organs because they thought that they would need those to think with. And they threw away the brain. So you know what? The Egyptians better darn well hope that they were wrong about their idea of eternal life, because otherwise, like Pharaoh's is like a zombie. No brains. Just wandering around. Brains. Would have been nice if they left me some. Okay? Context. Well, they had no reason to know. And God wasn't there to teach them science. God was there to reveal his character and his plans. So it's like, okay, the thoughts and intents of your heart. Got it. You understand that. You know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that to you. God's not going to say, you idiots. You think with your brain, do you think I put it up there for no reason? No. Come on. Could you imagine him talking to people at his level of science? I'm a chemist, okay? I used to work in aerospace research. I'm like playing with the little Duplo Legos compared to where he is with science. Good thing he doesn't talk about scientific truth to me. I wouldn't know what the heck he's talking about. All right. Now the third big thing is that they were very community-based instead of individuals. We're individualistic. We think about ourselves, what I want to do, what I like, what I don't like, and we think about ourselves constantly. We were raised to do that. Wasn't so in the ancient world. They thought as a community. Where do I fit in the community? How am I valuable to the community? How do I please the community? How does the community see me? Am I a good person in the eyes of the community? There's nothing wrong with looking at it that way. It's different. The Bible was written from that point of view, and actually the book that I just finished writing, that I wrote actually for older teens and grown-ups, is on that. So that's coming out soon. But that's a more advanced book. That's a more advanced curriculum than I've done in the past. So, and they also, I didn't write it here, they also thought in terms of covenants, eternal promises. And I wrote about that in 10 Commandments and the Covenant Promise in that curriculum book. So that's important to understand that too. If you don't understand covenants, you're not going to understand a lot of what Yeshua or Jesus was talking about when he was talking to people about God. All right? So, all those things, they made people thought differently. They didn't think wrongly. See, it's not about wrong and right. It's about context. It's about understanding the way they thought so that when they wrote things, we can understand what they're saying about God, because the truths about God don't change no matter how much scientific knowledge we get. No matter if we change from being community organized to individualistic, if we change from focusing on people's honor or shame versus focusing on whether they're innocent or guilty, one isn't right and one isn't wrong. There are good and bad points to everything. There are good things about our society that they didn't have then that they would have benefited from. Good things about their society then that we don't have now that we would benefit from. It's just about context. And God was speaking to people who knew certain things and believed certain things, and he used those things to tell them about him, because he never changes. So, next week we're going to talk about the importance of genealogies, and that's going to touch on honor and shame a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions about Jesus' genealogy, something that I just learned just this last week, because a friend sent me a series of books, and I found out something amazing that totally explains why they put his genealogies in the book of Matthew and the book of Luke. Anyway, so I hope you had a laugh today. I love teaching why context is important, because it's just funny, and not to poke fun at other cultures, because really they would be looking at our idioms and they would just be laughing too. And they do. Idioms are funny. It's just one of the things that makes it all the more tricky to read something that was written to other people, but it also is something that makes it a lot more fun and challenging. So we'll see you next week for genealogies, and I love you. I'm praying for you, and I hope that you have a wonderful week studying the scripture together, and I hope that you'll read Matthew chapter 1 so that you can be ready for the next, I think, 6 or 8 weeks of lessons just on that. You take care. Bye-bye.